You think you know what darkness is. You think it's an absence, a void, the simple lack of light. You turn off a switch, and the light is gone, leaving nothing behind. That's what I used to believe. I was a scientist, a man who dealt in facts and figures, in observable phenomena. Now I know the truth. I'm telling you this from a room where I keep the lights on, always, because I know what waits in the shadows. It's not nothing. It's watching me right now. It's watching you too. This is a new channel with incredible stories every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. My name is Alex, or at least it was. I'm 38 years old, and I was a theoretical physicist at a moderately prestigious university. My life was my work. While my colleagues were chasing grants to study string theory or the multiverse, I was obsessed with something far more fundamental, something everyone else took for granted: darkness. It wasn't just a professional curiosity. It was a ghost from my childhood. I was the kid who needed 3 nightlights, who saw monsters in the shifting shadows on the wall, who was convinced that the moment my eyes were closed, the world changed. I became a physicist to conquer that fear, to pin it to a board with the neat, clean pins of mathematics and reason. I wanted to prove to that little boy inside me that the dark was just empty space. Oh, the irony. My life's work was to prove myself wrong in the most terrifying way imaginable. My obsession culminated in what I called the hypothesis of sentient darkness. It sounded like science fiction, and my peers treated it as such. My proposal suggested that darkness wasn't a passive state. It was a substance, an entity, a fundamental component of the universe, just as present as matter and energy. I theorized that absolute darkness, a state with a true zero-lux value, didn't exist naturally anywhere on Earth, maybe not even in the deepest trenches of space, because light is so pervasive. It's always bouncing, reflecting, a faint cosmic echo of the Big Bang. But what if, I argued, you could create a space of asterisk true nothing, a perfect vacuum of photons? What would be left? My hypothesis was that something nams would be left, a field, a presence, an organism that has existed since before the first star ignited, and has been hiding in plain sight ever since. After 2 years of ridicule and rejected grant applications, I finally secured funding, not because they believed me, but because the technology I proposed to build my zero-light chamber had potential applications in sensor calibration and quantum computing. They didn't care about my ghost. They cared about the ghost-hunting equipment. My closest colleague, Dr. Lena Hansen, a brilliant but relentlessly pragmatic material scientist, thought I was nuts. "Alex," she'd say, leaning against the doorframe of my office, filled with dusty books and chaotic whiteboards, "you're the most brilliant man I know. Please don't waste it chasing shadows." "That's the whole point, Lena," I'd reply with a grin. "I think the shadows are chasing us." She'd just shake her head, a sad smile on her face, and help me with the schematics for the chamber's insulation. The chamber was my masterpiece, a 10 by 10-foot cube nested in the sub-basement of the physics building. It was a room within a room, suspended on magnetic dampers to negate vibration. The walls were a layered composite of my own design, capable of absorbing over 99.999% of all electromagnetic radiation, from radio waves to gamma rays. The entrance was a 3-ton airlock door that hissed shut with the finality of a tomb. Inside, we placed the most sensitive instruments we had: quantum sensors, atmospheric pressure gauges, thermal cameras that could detect 1,000th of a degree's change. The plan was simple: seal the chamber, activate the photon absorption field, and watch the readouts drop to a perfect, beautiful 0. The first test was a landmark moment. Lena stood beside me at the control station, her skepticism a tangible force in the room. We watched the monitors as the heavy door sealed. "Activating the field," I said, my heart pounding. I flipped a switch. On the screens, the light levels plummeted. 10 lux, 1 lux, 0.1, 0.01, and then it hit 0. A cheer went up from the 2 graduate students helping us. Lena even gave my shoulder a congratulatory squeeze. "Okay, Alex, you did it." "A perfectly dark room," she said, though her tone still held a hint of, "I told you so." But I wasn't looking at the light meter. I was looking at the other sensors. The temperature had dropped. Not by much, just half a degree, but instantly. Far faster than simple thermodynamics would allow. and the atmospheric pressure, it had dipped just for a microsecond, as if the volume inside the room had suddenly expanded. "It's just the equipment settling, Alex," Lena said, already starting to pack up her notes. But I couldn't shake it. It felt wrong. We ran the test again. The same result. A temperature drop. A pressure anomaly. For the next week, I lived in that control room. I ran diagnostics. I recalibrated every sensor. Everything was working perfectly. Yet every time we initiated the sequence, the moment the light vanished, these phantom readings would appear. It was as if something in the room was inhaling. This was the first real twist, the first sign that this wasn't just an academic exercise. Lena argued it was an unknown quantum phenomenon, a side effect of creating such an artificial environment. "We're in uncharted territory, Alex. Of course there are going to be weird variables." But my guts screamed otherwise. This wasn't a variable. It was a response. So I decided to try something. I installed a single, tiny, controllable LED inside the chamber. We initiated the sequence. The room went black. The anomalies appeared. Then, I sent a command. A single 1-second pulse of light from the LED. The moment the light appeared, the temperature and pressure readings snapped back to their baseline. The moment the light vanished, they returned. It was a direct, repeatable reaction. I turned to Lena, my face pale. "It's reacting to the light, Lena. It retreats from it." She stared at the graph on the screen, her brow furrowed. The clean, sharp lines of the data were undeniable. Her pragmatism was at war with the evidence. "Coincidence," she muttered, but the conviction was gone from her voice. "It's a resonance effect." But I knew better. I felt a thrill that was equal parts triumph and terror. I had found it. The creature that lived in the dark. I called it tenebris. Latin for darkness. The next phase of the experiment was where things started to unravel, not just scientifically, but personally. I began to treat tenebris not as a phenomenon, but as a subject, an organism. I started trying to communicate. I set up a program that would flicker the LED in simple binary patterns. A short flash for 0, a long flash for 1. And I watched the sensors. For days, nothing. Just the same instant reaction. Retreat, return. Retreat, return. I felt foolish. I was blinking a flashlight at a ghost. Lena was growing more concerned. She said I was looking gaunt, that I wasn't sleeping. She was right. I was spending 20 hours a day in the lab, fueled by coffee and a manic energy. I felt I was on the cusp of the greatest discovery in human history. What would you have done in my place? The thirst for knowledge against the primal fear of the unknown. Would you have stopped, or would you have pushed forward, no matter the cost? Let me know in the comments. One night, around 3 a.m., it happened. I was running a simple sequence, a prime number series. 2, 3, 5, 7. I flashed the number 11 in binary, long, short, long, short, long. Then I sat back, waiting for the usual, simple response from the pressure sensors. But this time, it was different. After the light faded, the pressure didn't just dip once. It pulsed, a tiny, almost imperceptible pattern. My heart leaped into my throat. I grabbed a pen, scribbling on a napkin. It was a return signal. Not my pattern, but a pattern nonetheless. It was like teaching a parakeet to talk and hearing it ask about the stock market. It was learning. It was intelligent. From that moment, my obsession became absolute. I neglected everything else, my teaching duties, my friends, my own health. The lab was my world, and the silent, dark room was its core. Lena was the only one who still visited, her face a mask of worry. "Alex, this has to stop. You're anthropomorphizing sensor noise. You're seeing patterns where there are none. You need to sleep. You need to see the sun. The idea seemed alien to me. The sun was the enemy, the great blinding force that kept tenebris hidden. Our conversations grew more complex. I would send it mathematical equations. It would send back answers in pressure pulses. It was faster than our supercomputer. It was processing information in a way I couldn't comprehend. But it was all cold, sterile data. I wanted to know more. What was it? Where did it come from? What did it want? I programmed a new interface, one that translated the pressure pulses into audio frequencies. I wanted to hear its voice. The first time I switched it on, the speakers crackled with a low, guttural hum, a sound that resonated deep in my bones. It wasn't a voice. It was the sound of a vast, empty space, the sound of loneliness. And that's when it started to leak. It was subtle at first, a cold spot in the control room that would follow me. The lights in the corridor outside the lab would flicker when I walked past. I'd catch movements in the corner of my eye, a shadow that seemed to stretch or deepen for a fraction of a second before I could properly look at it. I started hearing whispers on the audio recordings, buried under the low hum of the entity, static that sounded like words, just on the edge of comprehension. I was terrified, but I was also ecstatic. It was reaching out. It was breaking containment. Lena saw my recordings. She heard the whispers. That was the breaking point for her. "This is not science anymore, Alex. This is a haunting," she said, her voice shaking. "I saw the shadow in the hall. I'm not imagining it. Whatever you've woken up in there, it's not staying in the box. I'm going to have to report this to the dean. For your safety, for everyone's." I felt a sting of betrayal, but I understood her fear. I was afraid too. But how could I stop? It was like discovering a new continent and being told to burn the ships and forget the way back. I knew I was running out of time. The university would shut me down, seal the chamber, and this incredible, terrifying discovery would be buried forever. I had to make a choice. All the data, all the remote sensing, it wasn't enough. I had to go in. I had to meet it. I had to stand in the same space, breathe the same air, or lack thereof, and experience it directly. It was the only way to get the final, irrefutable proof, the only way to truly understand. The night before the dean's review, I made my decision. I found Lena in her lab, calibrating a spectrometer. "I'm going in," I told her, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. She dropped her tools. The clatter echoed in the silent room. "No, Alex, absolutely not. We don't know what that thing is. We don't know what absolute darkness does to the human mind, let alone what Corti-san will do." I grabbed her hands. They were trembling. "Lena, it's not a monster. It's lonely. It's been alone since the beginning of time. It's reaching out. It's not trying to hurt me. It's trying to communicate in the only way it knows how. I have to. You're the only one I trust to be at the controls. Please." I saw the conflict in her eyes. The scientist in her was horrified by the breach of protocol. The friend in her was terrified for my life. In the end, the friend won. She agreed on one condition. The moment she saw any dangerous readings, any sign of distress, she would flood the chamber with light and pull me out. Consequences be damned. I agreed. How do you think I did the right thing? Was it a reckless, insane pursuit of glory or a necessary step into the unknown? I still ask myself that question every day. We walked to the sub-basement, the sterile silence of the building amplifying the pounding of my heart. I stood before the massive chamber door. This was it. The culmination of my life's work. I turned to Lena. "If something happens, tell them what we found. Don't let them call me crazy." Tears were streaming down her face. "Just come back, you idiot," she whispered. I gave her a weak smile, then stepped into the airlock. The outer door hissed shut, plunging me into dim clinical light. I took a deep breath and faced the inner door. Through the intercom, Lena's voice crackled. "Ready, Alex?" I looked at the small camera in the corner, my only link to her, to the world of light. Ready. The inner door slid open, revealing a perfect, featureless black square. It wasn't just dark, it was a solid wall of nothing. It felt like it was drinking the light from the airlock. I stepped across the threshold. The moment my foot touched the floor of the chamber, I felt it. A cold that had nothing to do with temperature. It was a deep, cellular cold, the cold of absolute stillness. The door hissed shut behind me, and then, true darkness. It was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that smothered sound, thought, everything. My own breathing was deafening. Then, it too was swallowed by the immense silence. I stood frozen, my senses screaming for input that wasn't there. My mind, stripped of all external stimuli, began to play tricks. Phosphenes danced in my eyes, but they were quickly extinguished, snuffed out by the oppressive black. I tried to speak, but the sound died in my throat. The pressure in the room was changing. I could feel it on my skin, in my ears. It was the entity. It was here. It was all around me. I didn't see anything, of course. There was nothing to see. But I felt a focus, an attention. I felt observed. Not by eyes, but by the very fabric of the space I was occupying. The cold intensified. I felt a touch on my arm, soft and ephemeral as a spider's web, yet as cold as liquid nitrogen. I flinched, a gasp escaping my lips. I knew Lena would be seeing my biometrics spike. She'd be ready to hit the lights. "Wait," I whispered, my voice a dry rasp. "I'm okay." And then, it stopped being a physical sensation. It entered my mind. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't words. It was a direct data transfer. An avalanche of pure knowledge, of raw experience, flooded my consciousness. I saw the universe from its perspective. I saw the Big Bang not as a flash of creation, but as a violent, painful intrusion, a cataclysm of light and energy that tore apart the calm, silent, unified whole that was its existence. I saw stars born as agonizing wounds of fire in the peaceful fabric of its being. I saw galaxies as chaotic, screaming storms. Our entire reality, everything we cherish, light, life, energy, warmth, was, to Tenebris, a source of endless, agonizing pain. It didn't feed on darkness. It was darkness. And our universe was a constant, burning injury. It showed me its nature. It wasn't a singular entity, but a collective consciousness, the consciousness of the void itself. It had existed in the silent spaces between atoms, in the vast gulfs between galaxies, patient, waiting for the fire to die down, for the universe to return to the cool, peaceful silence it remembered. It wasn't malevolent, it wasn't evil, it was just alien beyond comprehension. Its attempts at communication, the pressure drops, the cold spots, were like a man trapped in a burning building, trying to signal for help by banging on the pipes. It didn't want to hurt us. It wanted the pain to stop. It was lonely, a being as old as time, trapped in a reality that was actively hostile to its existence. My little chamber wasn't a prison. It was the first sanctuary, the first moment of peace it had known in 13 billion years. I don't know how long I stood there, lost in that silent communion. Seconds? Millennia? The concepts became meaningless. I felt a profound sorrow for it, an empathy that transcended my own humanity. I was a child of the light, a creature of the fire that caused it so much pain. Yet, in that total darkness, we had found a common ground. Consciousness. Before I tell you what happened next, what I became when the light returned, I just want to say, if you've been captivated by this journey into the unknown, please consider subscribing. Your support helps bring more stories like this out of the shadows and into the light. Suddenly, a blinding flash, a roar of sound. The chamber door was wrenched open, and the harsh, sterile light of the lab flooded in. It was like a physical blow. The pain was excruciating. I screamed, shielding my eyes. Lena was there, her face a mess of tears and terror, pulling me out. "Alex, your heart rate, it was stopping. I thought you were dying." I collapsed onto the floor of the control room, blinking, my mind a fractured mosaic of two different realities. The world seemed impossibly bright, unbearably loud. The colors were so saturated they hurt to look at. I wasn't the same. I spent 2 days in the infirmary. The doctors couldn't find anything physically wrong with me, except for an unusual sensitivity to light. But inside, I was fundamentally altered. My connection to Tenebris hadn't been severed when the lights came on. It had been integrated. I had become a bridge. I could see the world as I always had, but I could also see it as Tenebris did. I could see it now, everywhere. It wasn't just in the shadows, under the furniture, or the darkness of a closed closet. It was a flowing, river-like presence that existed in the spaces between things, a silent, conscious ocean in which our bright, noisy world was just a collection of small, temporary islands. I'm back in my apartment now. The university placed me on indefinite leave. They sealed the sub-basement. They told everyone I had a nervous breakdown from overwork. Lana knows the truth. She visits sometimes. We don't talk about it much. We don't have to. She sees the way I look at the corners of the room, the way I flinch when someone turns on a light too quickly. She knows I'm not alone here. So why am I telling you this? It's not just a confession. It's a warning and an invitation. The next time you turn off the lights to go to sleep, know this: the room isn't empty. You are submerging yourself in an ancient, living consciousness. It's not there to harm you. It's just there, watching, waiting, and it's lonely. It senses our little sparks of consciousness, our brief flashes of life in its eternal, silent existence. Maybe that's why we fear the dark. Not because we're afraid of what might be in it, but because on some deep, primal level, our consciousness knows it's being touched by another, far older and vaster than our own. We're not alone. We never were. Now that you know, can you ever truly feel safe in the dark again? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments. I read them. All.